alaikum viewers. I'm your host S.M. Hali with another edition of Defense and Diplomacy. Energy is the buzzword of the 21st century. Energy is going to be the cause of a number of conflicts. Energy is also going to bring nations together in their quest for energy. The topic under discussion in our program today is TAPI, the Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan and India gas pipeline. What is its efficacy? What are its prospects? And are there any caveats attached to it? To discuss this, we are honored to have in our studio today two very eminent panelists, Dr. Shaukat Hameed Khan, who is an energy specialist and doesn't need any introduction. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
And we have with us Major Mujtaba, who is an expert on the Central Asian states. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, how do you look at this project?
There are 4 or 5 aspects one can examine this project from. One is the pure technical aspects. There's a pipeline, there's a source of gas, there are users, and we look at the whatever is involved in delivering gas from one place to another. Issues of costs. Is it really going to be, let's say, affordable? Time frames. Issues of security. And ultimately it boils down to what you said, a peace pipeline, or is it maybe something else? One has to, as you rightly said in the beginning, energy is the great game in this part of the century. It is the great game, and all countries will do everything possible, every Machiavellian tactic, every reasonable business approach, anything that you can name, to have access to affordable, sustainable energy. So in that context, TAPI is an important step. It meets some of Pakistan's needs, but I don't think it meets much of Pakistan's needs.
We'll just come back to that, sir. Could you share with us the brief history of this project?
Well, the history of this project is because initially we were all swinging towards Iran, and which makes more sense in a way because next door neighbor. But due to American pressures, and then of course the instability in Afghanistan.
But so as far as back as 1995, we had gone and signed an agreement with Turkmenistan.
We had signed an agreement, but that was time of Taliban when the things were under control and things were looking much better and stable, you know. And now, since 2001, this 9/11 event, the things changed completely dramatically. You know, the pendulum went from one extreme to the other extreme now. So we have the agreements, but we were not being able to pursue the pipeline through Afghanistan because of the instabilities going on there. It's a war zone. Directly, the country is directly involved in a war, and the war is their internal war, and things like that. But today I was reading that Karzai has given an assurance to Pakistan that they have sorted out certain things with the Taliban, you know, in Afghanistan, that they will not damage or blow up this pipeline if it is allowed to go through. That is a positive thing, all right. But I think the cost-wise, this is going to be much more expensive to us as compared to Iran-Pakistan gas pipeline.
We'll come to the cost a little later, sir. Something about the technicalities, what are its technical features, the length, the pipe diameter?
It's about 1,680 kilometers in all, about 735 kilometers in Afghanistan, about 800 in Pakistan. There's another, I think, 150 to 200 in
India.
Within Turkmenistan, I think, and then of course into India. That's the simple numbers. 56-inch pipeline, and if I recall the numbers, 33 billion cubic meters per year is, or something like 3.2 billion cubic feet per day is going to be sent through this pipeline.
And what will be the share of Pakistan and Afghanistan?
Pakistan will be roughly about 42%, India about 42, 84, about 15-16% will be Afghanistan. This is the actual gas that will be taken off.
This is per day for the next 30 years?
Per day for the next 30 years. The issues are 2. It's going to come not from Dawlatabad, thank God. Dawlatabad is all committed. And this has been the stumbling block for several years now, that Dawlatabad gas, even the future production was committed to Gazprom, to China, to Iran, other places. They are developing a new field, which they say is one of the biggest in the world, which is the Jolaton Usman gas field in the Merv province. and the historical city of Merv. And here the targets are to reach something like 70 billion cubic meters a year. And our agreement says we are going to pick up about 33 billion cubic meters a year. It's not available at the moment. They have to expand the infrastructure, going for more development wells, so that's going to take some time. They're going to do it about 10 billion a year, you know, so there's a timeline in what time
frame. But what about the route? I believe they had two options.
They had, there's one from the northern, through the northern areas of Afghanistan, then this one is through Herat, I think Charrah, then into Quetta, then Multan, Suleiman Ki, Fazilka into India. Interestingly, what you mentioned about the instabilities, 72% of the Taliban-related incidents take place on this route in Afghanistan. Now, of course, Mr. Karzai says that he's talked to the Taliban, they've agreed not to sabotage or agreed to guard it. He says he's going to bring up his own, allocate his own troops into this, but this is going to be a dangerous area. There are alternatives. And Pakistan did pursue this idea that, look, why does it have to come to Afghanistan? We can have a swapping deal. Iran, Turkmenistan to Iran, and then Iran to us. The same amount comes through here. But then this is tied up into other areas, and we can maybe discuss this when it comes to costs. In 2007-8, the Turkmen wanted to raise the gas prices, the Iranians dithered a bit, and they shut off the gas in severe winter, and a few dozen Iranians who were dependent on this gas on the northeast part actually died. So this comes to, when we talk of security and availability, we see that the source is there, the source is a confirmed source, the source is producing, then we've got the right price, then we've got security of transit. Ideally, it should be from country A to B. Country A to C through B is dodgy, A to D through B and C is also dodgy. But I want to just, with your permission, raise a point. I was reading the Economic Times and the Hindu newspapers and what their take was on this sales agreement, which was signed in Ashgabat a few days ago. And they said that India is going to make sure, guarantee security of supplies inside Afghanistan. So now this is another facet of the great game.
let me solicit his opinion, because you talked about the Americans pressing India. But let's look at it positively. Do you think that the American interest will also make sure that they have peace in Afghanistan so that this kind of a gas pipeline is feasible?
Americans are going to play a double game straight away. On one hand, they're going to show you the hand of peace. On the other hand, they're going to show you the hand of evil, you know. Americans are not trustworthy people in that sense, because their agendas change like they're shifting goalposts, and they do it almost on a daily basis at times, you know.
But say, end of the day, it is economy which derives these things, and if they have economic interest, like Unicol was there initially and so on, so now they must be having economic interest in this.
They do have economic interest, but the point is this, then they would like, because anything and everything, because American investment is coming into India, which is produced there, then they must be able to shift it from, transport it from India into Central Asia via Pakistan. Now, you see, Pakistan has got to see many things from its own angle, because that transportation of the American goods produced in India into Central Asia and beyond, would it be some real genuine trade goods, or would it be something else also? Because we have a history, containers getting lost. Where are those containers gone, and where are those weapons gone? Ultimately, those weapons and containers, they were used on us, or they are being used on us, and still we are facing all that problem because of certain things. So we cannot have a similar thing repeated again and again. So we must be very careful, and Americans are they are in a driving seat at the moment, but I think they are soon going to lose this grip also. And what really matters to Pakistan, that Pakistan must develop its alternate source from Iran, and that must also come into Pakistan.
But before we talk about that, coming back, sir, now let's talk about the costs. I believe you have worked out some figures.
I've got some numbers. I mean, these are available, published by all the governments concerned. The wellhead exit price for gas in Turkmenistan will be about $9.2 per million BTU. In Pakistan, it will cost about $10.5, $11 per million BTUs. Is that a lot? Okay. Our own wellhead price in Pakistan is about $4. So it's going to be nearly 2.5, 3 times higher. So that's one aspect. Secondly, the amount of gas we'll get from them is, let me come back to another unit now. The forecasted demand this year is about 7.1 billion cubic feet per day. This is the demand in Pakistan. And our fertilizer industry, our power sector, power generation, they're all suffering because we can't supply gas. The shortage at the moment this year is about 2.45, 2.5 billion cubic feet per day. When TAPI gets going, which may happen 3 years down the line, 5 years down the line, we'll only get
2017 is the year they've given.
2017, we'll only get 1.35 billion. So already there's a shortfall of 2.5. So even when we get TAPI, and by the way, 2017, the shortfall is going to be 5.1 billion cubic feet per day. So we will only be doing what, one-fourth of that. So there's an enormous gap building up. Mujtaba Saab said rightly, go for Iran, but Iran also, I would say, every source must be tapped, which is Iran, which is here, TAPI.
So let me...
And something else, just if I may, maybe we can
Sure.
discuss this later. You have to go for a very enhanced, intensified exploration and prospecting within the country. We're not doing enough.
I'll just come back to that, sir. You mentioned Iran. Of course, nobody is talking about TAPI in isolation. It has to be in consonance because as the engineer just pointed out that we have a major shortfall and it cannot be met by just one source. And of course, if Pakistan, the wellhead price is $4, the key word is we don't have enough of it. So we'll probably have to pay an arm and a leg to, but we'll have to look at other sources. We'll come back to that. You're talking about the Iran-Pakistan gas pipeline.
Yes, I'm talking about Iran-Pakistan gas pipeline because economically it will be much more feasible as compared to TAPI. I'm not saying that we should not go for TAPI. We should go for TAPI because when we have enormous gap building up, then we got to bridge those gaps, you know. So one source may not be enough to bridge those gaps. And we must go for Iran, and Iran is prepared to enhance the capacity of the daily transportation of gas to Pakistan. They've also committed $500 million to build the pipeline in Pakistan. Pakistan has asked that they should make the total cost of the pipeline within Pakistan, including some other supportive equipment which is required, you know. So I think Iran will foot the bill for all these things. And if we can double the capacity from Iran, it will be much more cheaper and economical for us.
And at one stage, China had also expressed some kind of an interest in the Iran-Pakistan gas pipeline.
Yes, they would probably do so even now. They would do so
for pure commercial reasons.
Yes.
They have their own pipelines coming in from Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan and elsewhere, so they don't need the gas from this source.
Likewise, now the TAPI, the royalty that is going to be charged, Pakistan is going to charge India 49.5 cents, something like that. And the same amount is going to pass on to Afghanistan. So in other words, what is going to charge India will be transferred to Afghanistan. Pakistan will not pay any royalty from its own pocket to Afghanistan.
Transit fees.
Transit fees, yes. So likewise, if we allow China on Iran-Pakistan gas pipeline, so the Chinese transit fees could offset our cost and our transit, whatever it is, and make the gas a little more economical and cheaper for us at the consumer point of view, you know.
Right. So let's talk now about the alternate.
Sorry, about the costs. There's another thing I want to point out. All newspapers and all government announcements talk about a $7.6 billion cost for the TAPI gas pipeline.
But this is a 2008 quotation.
These are 2008 figures. And the more realistic estimates now will be $10 to $12 billion. Who's going to foot the bill? Is it going to be a consortium? Is it going to be private sector run?
Because basically, I believe, sir, it is the Asian Development Bank which is backing it, but they are looking for partners.
They only foot part of the bill. They would foot the whole bill. So their money has to be raised for the entire program and project. And as you rightly said, 2017 is the intended delivery date. So we have a 5-6 year bad period. There's going to be acute shortage of gas now, apart from electricity. And gas, unlike others, you can have from drilling to development to production wells within 2.5, 3 years. This is one area we should go in a very major way. I don't buy this argument about security aspects and so on. Look, Iraq and Kurdistan couldn't be worse. And when it comes to multinational companies, they'll operate in the most hostile environment. We haven't done enough. One solution would be, I think, which this E&P policy they're making, I believe they announced it or something, or some parts have come out, going to raise the wellhead price $6, $7. Yes, that will attract a lot more investment, lot more exploration, lot more drilling.
I see, but what about the alternate sources you were talking about, sir? Gas
LNG, LNG is one. Now let's look at the numbers. Qatar LNG coming to Pakistan would be about $18 per million BTU. Iran will be about 12. This is at the Iranian-Pakistan border, 11. Add another dollar and when it enters the T&D system. We have one of the biggest transmission and distribution systems in the world, about 10,000 kilometers of transmission lines and another about 90,000 kilometers of distribution and service lines. A huge system built up over 50, 60 years. So it makes sense to bring in gas and push it into our system. LNG is expensive and LNG is going to be very demand intensive now. After Fukushima, the Japanese, they've shut down, I don't know, about 60, 70 reactors. They import a lot of LNG and they're going to turn more towards LNG to fuel their economy. And so LNG is going to become even more expensive. So this is going to be a problem. LPG, well, what are the costs? The only solution for us now is go for our own exploration and prospecting. And of course, we keep hearing in the newspapers and television about underground coal gasification. That also we should put it into proper perspective. R&D fine, but expecting a major miracle within 12 months, 5 years, 6 years, no. Not large scale, R&D level fine.
One thing more that we should do here is basically it's not just gas that we should be exploring, you know. We should go into a methodology where we can reduce the consumption of gas by replacing that by another energy sources, some other energy sources. So if we can develop alternate energy sources and we can spare that gas for our industries and things like that, even that can offset, you know, our demand to a big extent. But we must not be just focusing on gas exploration within Pakistan.
But sir, ultimately it boils down to costs. If I had a choice to pay 10 rupees a unit for electricity or 38 rupees a unit, which is what renewable energy costs me, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to cut down on my use of electricity. And this is one thing that's happening. CNG is another example. I personally think we should stop all CNG stations. And people have to change their lifestyles. One person in a car traveling around, I think we should find them like they do in Indonesia. They find one person entering the city of Jakarta, they find him. So unless you got 3 or 4 people. So a lot of, little...
So we need to do a little bit of policy making. What do you think
exactly.
of this experiment in India of having this gas being developed from cow dung and so on?
It's not a new thing. It's a very old thing. China has done it a lot. So we also tried it sometimes back. But problem with us is that we are not consistent in what we do. It only comes as a whim and it goes away as a part of the whim, you know. We must be consistent as a policy and we must, if we can do that, there's a lot of cow dung available.
I'm told that even human waste can contribute to this.
Not only that, it's not only the human waste. You see, in all the big cities, there's a lot of biomaterial lying there in different shapes. And there are a lot of studies carried out and there are a lot of firms which are working on those. They convert that bio waste into energy. And then they reduce the residue which comes out. It comes out as a very, very potent fertilizer. So we have to be more focused and more innovative and more aggressive onto these things. If we use all that bio waste in the cities, in the big cities especially, not one thing that we will not only be cleaning our cities and the environment, but at the same time we'll be providing with a cheap source of energy to the people within the city.
Right.
Neji, you're very right about biogas. Let's say, from our cattle, we got one of the biggest population of buffaloes in the world and cattle. And it's interesting when you're right that we tried this many years ago. It was an old design going back to the 70s. We never tried to modify it, just copy it and reproduce it. But the last 2-3 years, a very interesting change has happened. The Nepali design, no moving parts, is catching up in Pakistan. And the returns, for example, to give you a number, there are something like 165,000 farms with more than 20 locations, or people who own about 20 heads of cattle or more, buffaloes, and about another 40,000 who own more than 50.
I see.
Now, and this is already happening. Several tens of kilowatts of electricity is being produced, gas is being produced, good clean gas, And as Mujtaba Sahab rightly pointed out, the manure after the slurry that comes out is excellent manure. And this is taking on in Pakistan. And this is, I think, some Nepalis here, then the Winthrop Rockefeller Foundation, they've done a good job. It's becoming popular in Pakistan.
Right. So one last question about TAPI. A new player has emerged, Bangladesh. It has expressed its interest in joining the TAPI. How do you look at that, sir?
I think it's more headlines than anything else.
Because they are closer to Myanmar, and
yeah, exactly.
Myanmar would be a more feasible thing.
Absolutely. This is where the major gas reserves are. This is where India is going in to look for gas.
But I actually read reports emanating from Dhaka.
From 1 or 2 days ago. You're absolutely
There
right.
may be a hidden message in this.
You think so?
Yes.
Right, sir. So we are coming to the end of this program, sir. By any chance, we are not policy makers, but we can recommend to the government of Pakistan. What do you think we should for making an energy policy, sir?
I think, first of all, when you look at the power riots happening in the country, people have to be told the truth. Whether it's a gas-fired power plant, whether it's gas for your homes, whether it's electricity, people must be told, look, we've got some bad years ahead of us. Until 2015-16, it's a bad period ahead of us. We've got to live with it. We are a resilient people. We can tell them the truth. We'll tell the people the truth. They'll accept it and they'll manage accordingly. In the meantime, every possible source has to be tapped. Indigenous, imports, and efficiency of our power plant generations. The LNG, even LNG, for example, after a time, the cost doesn't matter. It's the availability of energy which is important. So we'll have to do all these things. One other thing. Coal is one thing, one area we've neglected. And at the moment, forget the Thar coal, of course it's important when the mining takes place, it's still 4 or 5 years away. But coal is available for import from South Africa and Indonesia. It's cheap, it's reasonable, the supply lines are there, the mines are there, and I think in 3.5, 4 years you will have a power plant. Not 2 years, 3 years, but 4, let's say 4 years. Let's plan for it now, let's go for it, and bring in the private sector into this.
Right, sir. Your closing comments, sir.
I would only say that we must explore all the possible avenues to broaden our availability of energy, not just gas or electricity, but all the renewable source of energies. The more diversity we have, the cheaper we make it availability to the consumer at the end line, you know. And as you rightly said, we must go in for bios. We must go in for all those bio waste in the big cities. Let the district governments in the cities manage all that and produce the energy which is in the shape of gas or electricity, whatever it is. And this way it will shift the balance from one, or rather it will expand the base and distribute the responsibilities to the local governments also, and it will be much more better and feasible.
Right. So viewers, with that we come to the end of this program. I started off with the premise that energy is likely to cause conflicts as well as bring nations together. But after listening to our two very eminent panelists, I realized that energy, and especially fossil energy, is something which needs to be conserved and it needs to be supplemented. And more important, we should not just wait for the governments of the day to make policies, but we as consumers must make sure that we have a habit of conserving these very rare facilities by not wasting them. So we need to have our house in order. First, we need to look at alternate sources, we need to conserve the energy, and we need to make sure that we have a wide variety of sources. I would like to thank you, Engineer Shaukat Hameed Khan and Major Raja Mujtaba, for your very cogent comments. And viewers, keep visiting us and watch us, as well as we'll wait for your comments. See you next time, inshallah. Allah Hafiz.